So today I want to talk about the Ling 6 sound check. This is something that we want to make sure that we do every single day before any formal academic instruction begins. But before I talk about how we do the Ling 6 sound check, I want to talk briefly about why. Why is it so important that we do this every day? The Ling 6 sound check is a quick, under 1 minute test for teachers, parents, and caregivers to determine how the child is hearing and processing sound from their device's microphone all the way to their brain. These 6 sounds have been carefully selected to represent the entire spectrum of sounds we use for speech, from the lowest frequencies to the highest frequencies. And each sound in the test gives us very specific information about other sounds in those same frequency ranges that the child may have difficulty hearing. The test is something that you can do as the child is getting dressed, as they're about to eat breakfast. I highly suggest building the Ling 6 test into part of your daily routine. In our classroom, this is something that we do each morning before we begin with our morning circle. Is we spend the first 20 to 30 minutes just checking devices. Because if the child's devices are not working, if they're not functioning optimally, then the rest of the day of the academic instruction is going to be compromised. And it's really important that we make sure that these devices are functioning to their highest potential so that we know that the child is able to access all of their academic instruction through their hearing technology. Best practice, if your child wears 2 devices, is to test each ear individually and then test them together. And then to test them at distances of 3 feet, 6 feet, and 12 feet. I also understand that this is very time consuming. I personally do not have time to test all of my students in all of those different areas every single day. So I suggest that you stagger them. Maybe one day you test the ears separately, the next day you test at a distance, the next day you try a further distance, and then keep a record of that data to share with the child's teacher at the end of the week. Keep the Ling 6 sound check in as quiet of an environment as possible, but on the days when that's just not possible, make a note for your child's teacher about the environment that your child was tested in. Was the TV on? Were there siblings playing nearby? Was the dog barking? This is all important information for the child's teacher to know. And again, this is all about us having the most accurate data possible on these students' listening conditions and their listening performance. I like to listen to my child's devices with a stethoscope if they have hearing aids, or your listening kit if they have cochlear implants. This is a great way to save time, is to listen to the device, listen to one device while you're testing the other device on their ear. So for example, if my student here was doing the Ling 6 test while wearing his left hearing aid, I would be listening to the right hearing aid at the same time, facing the child away from me, so that I can be giving the same sounds while I'm listening in the device and the child's listening in their left hearing aid, and then we switch to eliminate the need to do it 4 different times. We can just do it twice. And then that lets me know that at least the sound is sounding clear in the hearing aid microphone. That gives me really good information about how that device is functioning. If you don't have a stethoscope or a listening kit, please reach out to your child's educational audiologist. I'm sure they would be happy to either provide that for you or direct you to how you could get those tools, because that's a really important thing to be able to listen to your child's devices, to make sure those batteries are working, to make sure that microphone is sounding clear. When you have the hearing aid or the cochlear implant, just do a quick visual check. Make sure that the ear mold, that the tubing is intact. Make sure that there's no earwax blocking the hole of the hearing aid, because that can be, that's one of the easiest fixes, right? If we can't hear the sound coming out of the hearing aid, we notice that there's some earwax in that, we can just quickly clean that out of there, and it's not a problem. It's really important to keep your voice volume as normal as possible. You want to keep your volume at a conversational level. So I don't want to raise my voice. I don't want to lower my voice. I want to make it as conversational as possible. If the child doesn't hear the sound, or if they repeat it incorrectly, I don't want to raise my voice and say it louder. I'm just going to make a note on my chart. I'm going to come back to that sound later, again, at a regular conversational volume. It's important that I don't deliver the sounds rhythmically, that I stagger the times between the sounds that I'm giving. So for example, instead of going ah, ooh, e, I want to make it less predictable, so it would sound more like ah, ooh, E. I don't want the child to rely on predictability to know when that sound is coming. I want to make sure that I am accurately testing their listening skills, not their ability to memorize which sound is coming next. If you and your child are using a remote microphone system at home, so test just their devices first, then turn on the remote microphone system, have it connected to their devices, and then be sure that they can complete the Ling 6 test with both the microphone and without. And then if they're able to do both of those things, then that tells us not only is their hearing technology functioning appropriately, but the remote microphone is functioning as well. The most important thing I'm going to say about the Ling 6 test and sharing the information with your teacher is please, please, please be honest. We are not judging you. This is not a test where your child is being graded. We want to have the most accurate data possible as to what these children, as to what your kids are able to hear and listen to and repeat. This gives us such valuable information about what they're hearing, and it also informs our teaching practice. It informs our instruction, and it tells us as teachers what our students are able to hear and process at that time. So if I'm testing my student here, I want him to be about 3 feet away from me, and I'm going to seat him first with his left ear facing me, but I'm going to sit behind so that visually he's not able to see my mouth when I'm giving the sounds. Sometimes you'll see teachers use a speech hoop or a speech screen, and we do that if the child is facing us so that they're not able to read our lips when we're giving the Ling 6 test. But if the child is facing away from me, then I don't need to use my speech screen because I know that they're not accessing visually the sounds that I'm giving. So here's an example of how I would give the test, and we're just going to pretend that my little friend here is responding accurately. Ooh. E. So you'll notice, I don't know if you could tell, but between a few of those sounds, I was forcing myself to count to 5 in my head because it can be hard to remember to leave that wait time and that silence. And then there were times that I delivered the sounds much closer together. And again, I'm doing that so that it doesn't become predictable for the student, that I know I'm really testing their listening skills and that I'm not testing their ability to memorize the sounds and the rhythm in which I'm delivering the sounds. And then when I'm done with that ear, I'm going to turn him around so that his right ear is facing me. And I'm going to do it all over again. Now, if any of those sounds did not come back, if they were substituted, or if the child, let's say, for example, I gave the sound E and the child said ooh, we want to make a note of that on the form and be sure to share that with your child's teacher. If that becomes a pattern over time, that is really important information about specific frequencies that that child might not be able to hear with their hearing aid or cochlear implant. So again, sharing this with your child's teacher or educational audiologist is such valuable information for them to have. I hope this has been informative and empowering for you parents. Doing the Ling 6 sound check is a quick 1-minute way to check the quality of the child's listening abilities from microphone to brain. Thanks for watching.